Guys, I'm excited to explore a little of God's Word with you today. Starting in verse 47 of Luke 22. While Jesus was still speaking, a crowd came up, and the man who was called Judas, one of the 12 disciples, was leading them. He approached Jesus to kiss him, but Jesus asked him, "Judas, are you betraying the Son of Man with a kiss?" When Jesus' followers saw what was going to happen, they said, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" And one of them struck the servant of the high priest, cutting off his right ear. But Jesus answered, "No more of this." And he touched the man's ear and healed him. Then Jesus said to the chief priests and the officers of the temple guard and the elders who had come for him, "Am I leading a rebellion that you had to come to me with swords and clubs? Every day I was with you in the temple courts, but you didn't lay a hand on me then. But this is your hour, when darkness reigns." At the beginning of the story here, the disciples of Jesus ask a curious question. They say, "Lord, should we strike with our swords?" Now, what Jesus has ever said or done has led them to believe that now would be a good time for violence? It's kind of somber irony here. I mean, there's no irony that the soldiers have swords. That's what soldiers do. It's what governments do. Name me one government that's not propped up with violence. Well, we call it national security, but don't expect it through better education or better health care. See, all that talk about "in God we trust" is a lie. When the chips are down, give us a sword. So there's no irony in that. The irony is that Jesus' own disciples have swords. See, all that talk about turn the other cheek and not resisting evil was fine for sunnier days when Jesus was popular and spiritual. But now that things have gotten political and dark, and the soldiers with their swords, come on, Jesus, now is the time to be realistic. Let's roll. Of course, we all know violence is not the way of Jesus, that Jesus had more spiritual goals like love and righteousness and other sweet spiritualities. But there are times you just got to forget all that and take matters in hand. Okay, we all know violence is a bad idea. But when bombing an oppressive government, it's okay. Violence done by terrorists is bad. But violence done against terrorists, that's okay. Killing is wrong when it's done by a murderer. But when it's done by the jury that's punishing the murderer, it's okay. See, we live in a country that is built on and bathed in blood. We are all beneficiaries of violence. And to all governments, including the USA, Jesus says, "This is your hour, when darkness reigns." Now, there's no debate that Jesus condemned violence for any cause, noble or not. But if ever there was a time for violence, it's now, here, when the Son of God is being attacked. I mean, come on, Jesus, your life and your movement is being unjustly threatened. To which Jesus replies, "No more of this." Even when we have all of our reasons for our self-justified defense, Jesus says, "No more of this." Other places, Jesus made suggestions. Consider the lilies. Or blessed are the peacemakers. But here he commands, "No more of this." See, when we draw our swords as Jesus' followers, there's no difference between the state and us. When it gets dark, you can't tell the difference between the followers of the empire and the followers of Jesus. In the dark, we've all got swords. The betrayer is us. With our swords and our guns and our bombs and our defense, we kiss when really there's violence in our hearts. See, Jesus is more about healing the effects of our violence because he actually loves his enemies. And all the world's kingdoms are propped up by swords, but Jesus has nothing to prop up his kingdom but God. Jesus is led to go head to head with the powers of darkness, with no power except God.